I have been struggling with a noise issue both in the audio and on the picture of this asteroids for a while. There is a noticeable audio hum, and there is also jagged lines on the vectors. In test mode, you can see these jagged lines that are kind of shimmering. Hold the camera steady. So that's what I'm trying to resolve here. And what I believe the problem is, there's a grounding problem. This is the main power brick, and I don't know if you can see it. This is the chassis ground down here, and I had already cleaned up the lugs so that the chassis ground basically goes to anything that's floating, like the queen door, volume control, power on and off switch, the control panel, that's a chassis ground. So I found that one of the ground wires that comes up from the main power brick, there's a connector that goes to the monitor, and that same ground goes through the monitor, goes to the deflection board, which is your X ground, Y ground, and Z ground, that goes all the way back down to the motherboard. And that particular ground, instead of measuring 0, I was measuring 1 ohm or 2 ohms. I mean, it would float around. The lighting here is really brutal, so this video is just for me. But if I stick the probe in the connector that goes to the monitor, you can see that it's measuring about 1.9 ohms. And see if I can stick this in the back while with one hand, like that. So about 1.9 ohms. Now the connector that I believe is bad or dirty, that wire originates down here on the main power transformer. So this connector here, if I move it a little bit, and I will put the meter down so we can see what's going on. Let's move that down here. So if I move this a little bit, you can see it changing. See that? So let's get that back up to about, yeah. And I'm sure I can make that 0, but I'm going to connect the monitor back up and then show what the video looks like. Alright, so I was able to get the connector back on the monitor, and let's turn it on and see the effect. Now you can hear a pretty good hum from the Asteroids machine. Okay, the game is on. Let's put it in test mode. So in test mode you can see these jagged lines that are kind of shimmering. Hold the camera steady. So that's what I'm trying to resolve here. And I'm hoping that the ground that is X, Y, and Z ground coming from the main transformer. Let's pull back a little, see if we can focus. Yep. Alright, so I'm hoping that the ground will resolve that problem. Video, so I'm filming it now. I'm going to touch that wire, that ground wire, and let's see if it makes any difference. So go ahead and touch it.
The connector or the wire?
Well, the wires. So I don't see any difference. So maybe this won't solve the problem. Okay, turning it off. Alright, I took the connector off, I unplugged it, and I sprayed it with the deox on both ends. And I also did the same thing to all the connectors on the board, including the queen door and monitor, etc. So I sprayed it real well, not too much, but and then I let it dry overnight. So we will put it back together and see if there is any change in the resistance. Or I already know the resistance is back down to 0 instead of 1 ohm. But the question is, will it fix the problem of jagged lines on the vectors? Well, unfortunately, no better. I still see ripples in the screen, and still a pretty pronounced hum. So we'll have to go back to the drawing board and see what's going on. Okay, I have had some success with the jagged lines on the Asteroids machine. It turned out, I'll give you the quick and dirty, it turned out to be more than likely the bilateral switch on the Y output that was causing the jagged lines. I was probing around this chip, which is an op amp, and by mistake my oscilloscope probe went from pin 7 to pin 8, which I can show you on a schematic. From pin 7 to pin 8 sent 15 volts on this signal and kind of blew out this bilateral switch. This is your Y output. You have your digital to analog converter here, and then the analog signal that drives the monitor goes through, the op amp and the switch and another amplifier, and then there's your output to the monitor. Before I blew out the chips, I could see that the signal up here, for instance, on pin 4 was pretty clean, but then on pin 3 I could see the jagged lines. I had to really crank up the oscilloscope, but I could see that. But after I blew out the chips, I ended up just changing all 3 chips at the same time. So, and I put good quality sockets on the chips. So here's your DAC right there, and the amplifier, the bilateral switch, and another op amp, and then your output. So I will show you what it looks like on the monitor. So those lines to me are pretty darn clean. If you remember earlier, there was a zigzag jagged line, and for the most part it's very, very good. Now sometimes I see breathing on the monitor where it kind of wobbles in and out. I don't see it right now. Maybe when it warms up it straightens out, but it looks really good. So, and I can put the gameplay on real quick. If I flip the switch. So real sharp. That looks real nice. Super, super happy. Super happy with Asteroids. Okie dokes.